Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, sir. Yes, I see you. You know what? Let's take it there. When I say I see you, you say we are. I am here, right? I see you. So thank you all so much, and I want to just make sure you all give this opportunity in this moment. I appreciate the fact that the Forum family continue to let me be a voice, because as you grow, even as a young person, sometimes it can be muted. I'm blessed to be at a job where I can still share my story and continue to grow. So I never take it for granted. And even in this moment, I want to just kind of share with y'all. Yesterday, we went on the mural art store. Thank you for Yelena and PYN taking care of us in a way where the sister was sharing with us as we was kind of walking around, and we talked about it yesterday in the morning as far as how arts kind of leads to change. And I never realized that even who I am right now, growing in Philadelphia, right? So through this learning exchange, through the Forum family, I just want to share the fact that when we was talking, I really felt like, and just seeing that art, there was a boulder on my chest that was lifted yesterday. Just being here in this moment, right? So just to give you a little synopsis, right? Elementary school, I was from West Philadelphia, Parkside, going to Winfield, going to Heston. I literally was, being in Winfield, when it's all said and done, going to Parkside in elementary school, it was just more so like, on Friday nights, we had Friday. So after school, we would walk down 39th from Brown, down the bottom, if you know anything about Philadelphia, play football, whatever the case may be. By the time I went to middle school, you get disconnected from your elementary school friends, right? But at the same time, we would meet at Kelly's Pool. Kelly's Pool out Parkside, it is what it is. We would meet. We started playing Killer Man. Killer Man was actually a game now they call pitch up. We would throw the ball. You got to run before you get tackled, throw it again. It's a point system, right? It is what it is. But peep this, though. As time progressed, I'll never forget. And yesterday I went to sleep because sharing this story yesterday with the sister from Moore. I remember watching the buildings burn when it come to the move. And the fact that, I really haven't shared that piece of who I am. But you talk about trauma and the fact that the correlation when I went to high school, understanding how the government was against us at that particular time in my childhood, this is what I thought. So making that correlation between now and then, it was something that was like, wow. But then yesterday when Sister Mo checked in with me, right? Like, Mill, you good? You still ready for tomorrow? I literally woke up. I was halfway asleep because I was so tired from walking. It is what it is. I'm not as young as I used to be. So fell asleep, woke up, and when it was all said and done, she asked me this question, like, are you ready? You good? Just checking in with me. I respect you so much, right? I said, yeah, I'm cool. And I wanted to share this piece of me because, she literally said, what is it about Philadelphia you love so much? When it's all said and done, I'm here, I work in D.C., live in York City. The love of culture, the love of community, and the love of oneself. It was rooted and grounded in here. And as much as, things happen, disenfranchisement, oppression, systems that have been literally placed for these young adults that they may not be aware of. And just kind of respecting even Sister Shakima, being home here in Philadelphia, we've always stayed connected in the work that they're doing at PYN. I feel honored to even be at this space because without struggle, there's no progress. And we are here now. So thank you all so much. Sister Kima, I'm going to just kick it to you. When it's all said and done, it is what it is. Oh, one heartbeat. Oh, so clap, boom, boom. Welcome to the Forum. One heartbeat. Much respect.
Okay, let's make it happen. Good morning, everybody. I don't know okay, yes, my mic is on. Hello, family, how are you? Okay, y'all are not really peppy. Hello, family, how are you? Good, okay, we have a stellar panel. I'm gonna go up here and ask my colleagues to come with me. Come on, folks. So, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing my local family to my national family. And I want, just have, wherever you go is where you're going to be. Thank you. Good, 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 good. All righty. Oh, I know. I should sit you close to me. So, today, I am joined by what I would call a rock star local panel of friends. We work together in a lot of different contexts. Today, we're going to be talking about our city workforce plan. You have on your tables a year one update, which means that we've been doing the work together for a year. We actually spent about 18 months planning. And so we're going to talk about life pre-plan, systems change efforts, and what it really looks like to move the needle. And we're also going to talk about some things that you might want to consider if you think that this strategy is portable, what we've learned together during the journey, and how we're growing and what makes us hopeful. So to my far left, I have Cheryl Feldman, who's the Executive Director of 1199C. Many of you were able to see her work up close on the site visit. And for those of you who missed it, ask a friend who went. They will tell you it was fabulous. Cheryl has been, I affectionately refer to her as the godmother of workforce, although we're playing around with Queen of Apprenticeships as well. I have Justin from Gap, who is engaged, he's the HR manager, but also engaged in a local partnership with Youth Build. So we will have the perspective of service delivery and industry-specific work from Cheryl. We will have what employers need and see in terms of leaning closer in to programs with the partnership from Youth Build. I have Dr. Guy Generals with us, so we will have a thought about how post-secondary education is playing a pivotal role in the education space, but also leaning outward towards industry and bridging the learning from secondary to career. Who? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. He's the president of Community College of Philadelphia. Thank you, Sheila. I have Sheila Ireland here. She's the Executive Director of the City of Philadelphia's Office of Workforce Development, which has been given the charge of not only making sure the plan goes from paper to reality, but also coordinating and convening all these different partners. And right here, I have Mr. Patrick Clancy, who is the President and CEO of Philadelphia Works, that's our Workforce Investment Board. So you may call it something different in your town, but you know this work. So I've introduced you all to my crew, my peeps. Now let me introduce my peeps to you all. So I want to have a couple of questions for you guys. First, how many people, this is your first to second convening, you're new to the game, you don't know these family people, you're wondering what you got yourself into? Okay, great. Just don't be shy, raise your hands up high so we can see who you are. Awesome. How many people have been here? This is your third to fifth convening. You know these people, you kind of like them, you keep coming back. Awesome. How many people have been here all 6.5 years?
Whoa, all right.
How many folks have like the greatest relationship with their community college ever? Ever? Yeah, there's a few, right? They're nice. How many people work directly with your Workforce Investment Board? Yes? Whose collaborative is adjacent to or situated very close to your city officials? Anybody here? Oh, see, look at that.
There's a few in the back.
Who has the most impactful relationship with employers and are generating jobs beyond measure? Yeah. Oh, look at that. See those people, because if you're struggling, they know what to do. Awesome. How many people are community-based organizations and are leading our backbone or are leading a collective impact effort locally? Who are those people? Awesome. So as you can see, we have a plethora of perspectives in the audience, but also a lot of familiarity. So I want to take us to 2016, 2017. Life before the plan. And at that time, Patrick had a different job, right? He was at the state, not working locally. Sheila had a different job. She was in a place-based initiative, which you guys did go to the Promise Zone as well, and seeing the partnership, I'm sure, between Drexel and UCD and all of that work happening here. We have Dr. Generals, who was in his post leading community college. And Justin, were you at GAP in 2016? Justin's been toiling the soil since 2016 at GAP. Cheryl's also been in her place. So Cheryl, give us a sense of what life was like pre-plan. How did we get to a point of even deciding that coming together was the right way to go?
You did it, Shakima, right? We, as a city, had been going through a process of, I'm going to just talk from the youth perspective, of bringing people together in a really important setting. It was the Council of
Career and
College and Career Success. Most of the leading anchor organizations in the city sat on it under the last mayoral administration. And it really formed the foundation for us all beginning to think about how we collaborate together as organizations. But we were missing a very important piece, which is we didn't have a citywide strategy for workforce. We had an education strategy, but not a workforce strategy. And we were about to elect a new mayor. We elected a new mayor, and some of us bold and audacious people like Shakima and Jenny Sparandera, who now works for JP Morgan Chase, who is here in the city with the Join Collaborative, and myself, we approached the new mayor, and we said, if we're going to fight poverty in the city, we need a workforce plan, because we need jobs, and we need it to be organized around industry sectors. And lo and behold, our idea took root. And so I think we all realized that over this period, the last 18 months of developing this strategic plan, that what's really required is collaboration, and that we are building that brick by brick in the city between our organizations, so that we can really authentically open our doors to young people, authentically, in a real and impactful way. So we are on a new path, and I'm going to end there because others have the next step of the story to tell, but that's how it got started. It got started by a few of us saying, this is something that's really important to Philadelphia. We have a very poor city, and we need jobs, and we need to organize around jobs.
So imagine a room of 40 people who work together in different constellations but are now coming together to try to create a unified approach to developing jobs locally, addressing poverty, and trying to understand what our assets are and where we could build from. Dr. Generals, tell us why it was important for a community college to be at that table.
So I think historically community colleges have in some ways or another been involved in the workforce space, even though it may not have been entitled that way. If you look at the institutions of higher education, community colleges were the ones that in many cases started as career and technical education institutions, and we've quite often been involved in some type of workforce place development or workforce training. We've always been involved in different grants, whether it was the Perkins grants or whether it was the various portions of Title III, the tacit grant. So we've always, in many ways, been involved in that. But where we came up short was we were an entity into ourselves, and I think the importance of that meeting, which quite frankly is the first time I heard about it, was that it did bring those parties that we needed to be more successful to provide opportunities across the city, and it makes perfectly good sense. So why is it important for community colleges? Because, you know, in many ways we're the nexus of all of that. So whether it's training or whether it's job placement or whether it's pulling down large federal, state dollars, I think it's incredibly important for us to have coalesced into a team that's serving the interests in that space. And so, you know, I think you know, it only made sense for the community colleges to be there.
So Cheryl and some friends, I may have been there, myself as well. We march into Mike D's office. We say, listen, we need a plan. We got some national resources that are focused on demand-driven strategies. We have the foundation of opportunity here, and we don't want to squander it. And in order to be different, we think that we need a plan, and we'd like you to think that we need a plan. And not only would we like you to think that we need a plan, we want you to pull people together and make a plan happen. And Mike nodded his head, and we left. We said, we think that went well. We think that went well. And it did go well, because you get a couple of invitations that say, hey, the next 18 months of your life are sequestered in a planning process every other, we were meeting like once a month. It was a pretty frequent, and then there are going to be subcommittees that meet after those meetings, and we're expecting you to collect data, we're expecting you to share information, we're expecting you to come together and align around a strategy, and in comes Patrick. You're new to your role, and what do you think you're getting yourself into?
It's like, what is this? What are you people doing? No. So good morning, everybody. I'm Patrick Clancy, and I'm really lucky and blessed to be the president of the Philadelphia Works organization, which is the city's workforce development board. And really our strategy was, how do we better align our resources with what's really working in the city? And I think part of our challenge historically has been, we haven't viewed our partners as real partners. I think we always had them as a vendor, not a partner. And I think that's a real important change. A partner's got to be trustworthy. It's got to be open to change. It's got to be willing to understand that it's not about always the metrics, but it's about what's the quality of the work. How do we begin to connect dots better? So for me, it was a great opportunity to really take my knowledge of working at the state. So I worked for 2 years for the Governor Wolf's administration, overseeing the welfare to work program statewide. I also have about 25 other years. Am I that old?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm getting old. About 25 other years in workforce development. Had a stint at the community college. I had a stint at Goodwill. Yes, I do hop around a little bit. But this is the job that I think is really important in the city, because it helps us to take all the federal and state funds and really begin to figure out how do we align them. And I have to tell you, for cities and workforce boards that don't have a PYN, they are missing out dramatically. This work does not get done well without an intermediary like Philadelphia Youth Network. We wouldn't have the capacity in the workforce board to do all the amazing things. And when I look at my colleagues from around the state or even around the country, they marvel at this relationship. They marvel at the fact that we're so fortunate and lucky to have a passion, an amazing leader in Shakima, who really keeps pushing the envelope on how do we do it better. So for me, it was a great opportunity to do something new and innovative. And at Philadelphia Works, we're beginning to look at how do we begin to get more people up the career path. We've opened up our first ever apprenticeship unit, really dedicated to helping people, and youth in particular, get up into that career path. We're really lucky. I mean, Cheryl Feldman is amazing. Like, she's very humble, but I'm going to tell you, she's one of the best in the country. She has 13 apprenticeship programs, right? And you designed every one of them. Don't be humble. We have a community college that is just extraordinary with its resources and its ability to be impactful. And we don't have many other training institutions in the city that are that flexible and that willing to work with our customers at where they're at. There's a lot of organizations in the city and universities that want people at a certain level, but our community college has figured out ways to help people at lower achievement levels sort of get into programs so that we can actually help them get into a career path.
So as you can see, we have, Patrick just outlined quite a bit of assets that we were building on. Checks in the mail, thanks very much, good job. And also acknowledging that one of the roles that he played was a resource bringer But what he didn't say was that in order to bring those resources to bear for the plan, they were going to have to do a lot of things differently. So he's also incredible at shifting the way that the board thought about the resources. He did a masterful job of making the client more visible. So we used to have a youth plan and an adult plan, and we talked about youth and we talked about adults. Now we talk about one workforce system. Patrick made sure that youth were integrated and central to the conversation, not an add-in. That's a huge perspective shift. So if you think about your own local workforce investment boards, I think a litmus test question would be, where do youth fit in? Can you see it very clearly? Is it external to the larger plan? That was a huge transition that Patrick brought to the table as we thought about using resources differently. And then we have our Office of Workforce Development. So you came on sort of closer towards getting to producing an actual plan, right?
I came at the end.
You came in, well,
Yeah, so how hard is your job?
yeah.
Well, now you got the
She didn't
plan.
stay for all 18 months, but she's been here for the last 12, making sure that progress gets made. Why do you think it was really important for a mayor to champion this effort and to make room in the city for this kind of work? Because this office didn't exist before Sheila came to the table.
Yeah. So Philadelphia, you know, you have to think about the specific conditions that were around in 2016. And that was the first year that we got the designation of being the deepest poverty city of the 10 major cities in the United States. And so in some ways, what that did was create this burning imperative. You know, we had to have an answer. I mean, every organization here and the 49 leaders that were part of the initial plan are doing good work, but doing good work individually. And if we could have got it done in that way, we wouldn't be in the situation that we were in. So as we tried to work together and understand how to put a cohesive plan together, then comes 2017, and we're still the deepest poverty city. And then the plan is issued, the office opens, and we start to see the power of collaboration and moving the dime forward when people with very different perspectives understand that we are dealing with a city at risk. And the things that we do individually are not enough. You know, oftentimes when I think about what Mayor Kinney was trying to do when the citywide strategy was put in place and the office was created, it's a very simple kind of metaphor, you know, that I like to use, and it's, you know, it's play well together. I mean, first, you gotta play. There are people in the city who weren't in the game, frankly. The steering committee is much larger now, it's up to 75. Then it's about, well, are we doing quality work? Are we really touching the people that we need to touch? Are we really connecting them to work? Are we doing train and pray? Or are we doing train and work? A very different thing. And then it's together, and I think that's the genius of the plan. Frankly, I didn't get a job offer, I got a mandate from Mike D, right? He's like, we need you to do this. And I was like, is this the hill I'm gonna die on? I don't wanna die on this hill. You know what I mean? But once we started working together, I can tell you it's an amazing collaboration. The way systems can move when people actually come together to think about how we can move forward is just amazing, right? So I'm very happy to be here.
Wow. So we got plan. Well, we have influencing people to spur a plan. We got 49 people coming together to create the plan. We have different actors opening up their closed systems, because what Sheila just said was we have to play well together. That sort of implies that we may or may not have been playing at all, and well is questionable, right? And so we had to think about how to play differently at the table. We have services that are doing something, but not nearly enough to get us out of the designation as the deepest poverty rate. And we have lower literacies, we have numeracy, and seeing the income divide in Philadelphia. And so we're watching, we can look at a map and see where the problem is the greatest, And we can also see where we have the greatest opportunities. So now we're organized in the industry specific way. We're thinking about, growing apprenticeships and building a ecosystem of services so that young people with a set of varied interests have somewhere to start, whether that be in the community college or in a training program or new investments that have been made by the Workforce Board. Now we have an ecosystem of options. Justin, when you think about your work here in Philadelphia, what's encouraging to you as an employer, and what's the challenge or the cliff that you see that we have yet to jump over the hurdle?
So great question. So let me just first kind of ground some of the work that I do. So This Way Ahead is it's a model that we at Gap Inc. use to help support opportunity youth gain access into employment. And what it is currently, there's a couple of different models and iterations of what that looks like, but our ultimate goal is to bridge that gap through volunteerism, and that's our employees coming in and volunteering with community partners, with job readiness training, with relationship building that helps build the confidence of the youth. And then also outcomes is employment within our stores in Gap Inc. And so I wanted to start there with just first understanding that embedded in our values as an organization is this type of work. And ultimately, I think what I'm hearing in the conversation and what I'm loving in the conversation is that need for the collaboration, for the ultimate solves on how do we help support a population that we see as mutual benefit in how we build our talent strategies for our stores. And so there's a population that definitely is able to solve for some of our challenges as an employer, and one is how do we have a consistent stream of individuals that can come in and work in our buildings, that are prepared and that are able to solve for some of our business needs, right? And so the solve for that was the This Way Ahead program, and what first initially started as a community program, aligned with our values, became a part of our talent strategy. And so as we continue to evolve that talent strategy, these type of conversations are what's important to make sure that we are gaining mutual benefit from it, but also able to solve for some of the city's problems. We've been in Philadelphia now for 4 years with the This Way Ahead program, working specifically with Youth Build as a community partner and a couple of other organizations as we've continued to grow the program in the city. And we started minimally with 25, 26 internships, and this year we've grown to 73. And our goal is to continue to grow it in the city and continue to find opportunities for youth to gain employment in our stores.
If you had to sum up the business need, one of the challenges that we have in collaboration is that we speak different language, right? And so service providers understand barriers and what it takes to promote a culture of learning and how to support a young person through the stages. If you had to name the business need you're trying to solve for this community, how would you, succinctly, what's the business need that you're trying to solve with This Way Ahead?
We have jobs, and we need jobs to be filled. But I think that's the most simplest form of what we need. I think it's a job-ready, entry-level employee that's able to come into our workforce and grow. I think what's interesting about retail is that there's not a necessity for credentials, right? And so we go to this place of how do we hire for potential, and then provide trainings, provide development internally to help grow careers. I'm sitting in a seat where my supervisor, my boss, she just retired, high school diploma, but she's an HR director. And so it's this example of, 50% of our management, our upper field management, started in entry-level brand associate role. And I think that there's this disconnect sometimes in our industry between retail and what you see when you go into a store versus retail, what we see in career. And so I think that's one of the obstacles that we have to solve for is how do we continue to gain credibility around our ability to develop careers and it be employment that helps sustain the lives of people that are within our communities.
So he just artfully took us, we love our language, so down a career pathway, right? Yeah. One that we would not automatically think of. So I know some people heard entry, and maybe you do the thing that I do when I hear entry-level employment. I roll my eyes in my head, right? But he took us beyond entry. He talked about how you can start, but where you finish could be a very different place. And we don't often talk about the full path when we think about the post-secondary bridging and what's next, right? Everybody has to start somewhere. You don't just start out as president and CEO. You may have had some other jobs before then. And so I appreciate that you've outlined what a career pathway looks like for Gap in retail. Cheryl, you work in an industry-specific context. Help us understand how your programs connect along a career pathway.
So the three industry sectors we work in is healthcare, human services, and early childhood education. And before I start talking about the career path, I want to talk about how this collaboration can help build pipelines. To have someone who is a young person in our communities coming into jobs that are going to be family sustaining, there has to be some level of preparation. And that means that all of us have to turn our view to meeting that young person where they are and dealing with what is very real in Philadelphia, which is the trauma that is existing throughout our communities, and you talked so eloquently this morning about your experience. So in terms of building these career paths, it needs to start with the young person. And that requires a lot of work on all of our behalfs and the ability to collaborate. And it just occurred to me when Patrick was talking how different I feel now about working with the Workforce Board than I did 5 years ago, when it was a very compliance-driven organization, and the only thing that the Workforce Board wanted to know from us is what our outcomes were. And now I feel we have a partner who's going to help us really build these pathways and build the supports around those pathways. So, and that couldn't have happened without Pin's voice, and Pin advocating for the youth voice within this work. But that being said, the career paths in healthcare, human services, and early childhood also start kind of at that entry level with opportunities then to advance. And there are very specific steps along the way, and they're associated with credentials, college credits, degrees. And so we must build a partnership in order for that to work. In our early childhood education, we just have a phenomenal partnership with community college. Under Dr. General's leadership, our students are getting 18 college credits for prior learning and on-the-job learning instead of sitting in a classroom. That is a phenomenal opportunity. And so we start with that early CDA, Child Development Associate credential, but we quickly can move into this apprenticeship with on-the-job learning. And we're getting graduates out of, a 2.5 year apprenticeship program where people are working while they're going to school. And it's articulated right into a bachelor's degree with teaching certification because of the articulation agreements between the college and the 4-year university. The great thing about our organization is that we're also a school, so we do a lot of education ourselves and then connect to the college, and I think it provides us with a lot more control and ability to mold our programs in a way that's really going to incorporate positive youth development in a very meaningful way, instead of just handing off the student to another partner. By the time we hand that student off, they should be ready for work or ready for going to post-secondary. Because we do so much work with them, including what I consider really important work, contextualizing the academic skills with the life skills and the occupational skills, incorporating all of those skills, into one program that prepares a foundation from the beginning. And sometimes that's a hard sell with a young person. They need a job right now. And so sometimes, maybe we want to have them work at Gap while they're coming to us so they can have an income as they prepare for the next step. But there's no quick fix, not in healthcare. One of the things I do want to share with you is that we are having a tension in maintaining middle-skilled jobs. And I'm seeing that across the board. I'm seeing it in early childhood. I'm seeing it in healthcare, where there's a desire to just have that entry-level job, that home health aide or nurse aide, and skip all the way to RN, or just the CDA and all the way to the bachelor's degree. And that is a wrong way to go in our country. We need career steps that are accessible and doable and transparent and discreet. And so part of this is also advocacy with our industry partners to maintain those middle steps. Otherwise, where does diversity go? It goes out the window. Diversity goes out the window if you're saying entry into childcare is a bachelor's degree or entry into nursing is a registered nursing degree. Because the folks, my community here in Philadelphia, that's going to rule out the vast majority of people in accessing those jobs. And so it's all tied together. We can't talk about the career pathway without talking about trauma. We can't talk about career pathway without talking about equity and inclusion. We can't talk about the career pathway without employer engagement to ensure that we have accessible career ladders that are really going to support diversity all the way up to leadership positions. So what we're trying to do is prepare that academic foundation, the life skills, the self-efficacy from day one. And not talk about barriers, but talk about opportunities, right? And really provide a vision for our students that they can do this. This is something everyone can do if given the right tools and resources. And we're just thankful that the folks up here make it possible for us to do this work.
You just put out a really real sobering reality, which is like the impact of the overinflation of credentials as a proxy for readiness for a job, as a gateway to close the door to entry, and the impact that diversity or lack of diversity has on the bottom line. Anybody can pull up Google any study on diversity and the return on that investment, and you'll see companies that are more diverse have a bigger return. And so we know that that is a critical aspect to long-term success. Patrick, how do you see the labor market changing? And what are you guys positioning yourself to do in response to some of those changes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, very similar to what Cheryl mentioned, we are bringing together multiple industry partnerships. So Cheryl runs an amazing healthcare industry partnership, but we also have an advanced manufacturing, a logistics. We're really trying to get the employers in the room with the data, right? So from a workforce board perspective, we do a lot of research, we get a lot of information, but we want to make sure that that information actually relates to what the employers in Philadelphia need. So for us, it's about how do we put those two together and then work backwards to build a training program that leads to employment. So I think that is, we start with the employer, we start with the data, we start with where's the growth, and how do we ensure that individuals who maybe are at a lower achievement level right now can still get in. So what we've done at the Philadelphia Workforce Board is we've invested millions of dollars in all these bridge programs at the community college, at District 1199C. And I said, look, I'll pay for the bridge, but we need pathways in. Like, we can't have training programs that start at the 10th grade and 11th grade reading level when our customers are still at the 5th and 6th grade reading level. Like, and no one wants to be told to go to a literacy program, right? That just doesn't work anymore. So how do we contextualize? How do we blend it? But how do we begin to at least get people on a pathway so that we know that once they get in it and they see what the outcome could be long term, they're a little bit more invested.
And Dr. Generals, when you think about the partnerships necessary to be a bridge, right? There's the bridge, you're on the bridge, right? With your hands in both directions, sort of reaching to customers or students, as we call them, because all three of us are on the community college board as well. And you're also,
In fact, three of my 15 bosses are up here on this.
You're doing a good job, by the way.
yes, you are.
Oh, by the
There
way,
will be
he's
an
on my board,
evaluation
too.
at some point in the
You're
year.
on my board. It's a little quid pro quo.
Right.
But you're on the bridge that Patrick just talked about. And I hope that you guys are paying attention to a couple of the levers, because I want to highlight them. We talked about industry partnerships as a lever, right? And specifically bringing employers in the room with the data. That's a powerful connection. We talked a little bit about diverse opportunities in terms of programs, apprenticeships, pipeline programs, bridging programs. So when you're looking at your own landscape, which pieces do you have? Which pieces do you think, if you create them, will change the needle? Is something that I want you to keep in mind as you begin to think about the questions you might have, because there will be opportunity for audience participation via questions and comments. But Dr. Generals, you're on the bridge. What's important to sustain partnerships in both directions, to be the welcoming space for partners to learn and also be a trusted source for employers to find great talent?
So let me start by saying I have a little bit of a problem with the metaphor of a bridge.
Uh-oh.
Because, and I know that's the
people.
theme of the whole thing, but I have been touting this idea of K-16, K-20. You know, we need to mold into a organic whole. The bridge suggests there's, you know, the before, the after, and, you know, we're trying to tie together. And I think, you know, it is what it is right now. So to answer your question, I think it's very important for me to understand what the needs are coming in to the higher ed space, as well as being able to articulate what those needs are to those who are preparing students or clients to come into the higher ed space. However, I think that that's too partitioned. I really think that the issues that either prevent or enable success in the job market really start as early as high school, or 6th, 7th, 8th grade. The interest factors start in the 8th grade, 9th grade. I mean, there's an abundance of research that speaks to the fact that students who do well in certain very specific subjects are going to have successful careers. So if we're not talking about what those particular subjects are, and I'm going to bridge into Cheryl's comments, if we're not talking about it, by the time they get of age and are ready to go into the job market, I don't want to say it's too late, but it becomes much more of a taxing problem. Specifically as it relates to the equity gap, and you didn't ask me this question, but I have to say something. I don't think we can ignore the fact of automation driving that. You know, it's an overinflation of credentials, but it's also whole swaths of jobs are being wiped out by automation. And I think the onus is on us to figure out where those new jobs are. The onus is on us to prepare our students for those new jobs. And of course, the most obvious is, you know, the technologies, the STEM fields. We have to find ways to get more and more a generation of students into those STEM fields, because that's what's driving automation. And so those mid-tech, whether it's in healthcare or retail, quite frankly, they're really or, you know, you should see some of the research, and I know that you're doing a lot with truck drivers.
Right.
10 years from now, it's not likely to be a lot of truck drivers on the road because the automation is wiping that whole generation out. So that's the bad news. The good news is as technology advances, more jobs are created. So what's spinning off from this phenomena of automation are, you know, the green technologies that are out there. There's more jobs being produced in that field than there are in the carbon-based fields right now. In the healthcare profession, everybody cannot be a nurse, but there's an entire generation of social media technology, communication strategies that are embedded in the healthcare needs of hospitals and so forth. We have to find ways to train and prepare students for those things. So what we're doing specifically, the bridge thing, to get back to the bridge thing, is trying to find high interest, high skilled opportunities for young folks. So whether it's a drone academy or whether it's gamifying curriculum or finding, you know, technology based approaches towards curriculum. It's a way to further advance skills that, quite frankly, they already have. I don't know, I've got a young son, and, I said, you need to study so you can make a lot of money. He said, well, by the time I'm 12, I'll be streaming films and videos, and I'll make all the money that I need. So this is kind of the mentality that this generation and the aptitude that they're having. So I think it's really wonderful that we talk about how do we make the connections between where we are in the jobs, but we also need to think, to your point, about the jobs of the future. You said RNs. Quite frankly, the magnet hospitals are only taking BSNs. So what does that mean for my 200 students that are going to graduate? I need to find ways to articulate even further, to help them even further. And in Philadelphia, there aren't many public options. The nearest one is Westchester, which is an hour away. So I have to figure out ways to enable them to become competitive, to keep up with the competition that's out there. Part of it is what I do at my campus and the areas that I work in. But also part of it, and I think everybody needs to play a part of this, has to do with public policies. And so there's a hard push to deal with this issue of BSN slowly eliminating an entire generation of trained nurses. And I can go on and on, but I think jobs of the future needs to be part of this conversation. The idea, the metaphor of a bridge I can live with, because that's our reality, but I would prefer to start thinking more organically about how we function as different sectors.
Let's not live with a metaphor that has the time limitation. So I actually like a good little disagreement on the stage. So thank you for adding some fun. Now we can really be ourselves. Y'all can relax. We're going to be 100% of who we are. So I don't think you want that. Okay, Sheila said we are going to be 90% of who we are because 100% is too much for the world at this time. That was very honest and candid. Thank you, Sheila. So you bring up a couple of different points that I think is worth kind of driving home a little bit, right? The bridge works for right now needs, right? Right now needs. But if we are talking about the future of work and what fourth graders need to know in order to be prepared for what that future is, because that's the right question despite what we want. Like, we need to think about what do the fourth grade need to know. And in Philadelphia, we have Read by Fourth, right? So K through 4, they are learning the basics of reading, which is actually pretty standard and sound. We keep talking about it like we're doing something innovative, but like to learn to read, phonemic awareness, recognition of words, like there's a pretty prescriptive path in order to do that. But after the fourth grade, it's actually reading to learn, right? And you talked about interest. So if you could paint a vision for us of what not necessarily the right metaphor, what you would like to see, ground us all in that vision.
So specifically in education, I think the curriculum approach or the pedagogical approach that's occurring in the fourth grade needs to occur as a result of conversations between those and teachers in the fourth grade and teachers in higher education and teacher training programs in the graduate schools. That is not happening right now. So you have a mismatch between what expectations are and K-12, fourth grade specifically, and in higher education. I think that we have one-off partnerships, but we don't have a holistic approach towards that one student who's moving through a system of education. So they're getting stops in different stimulus at different points along the continuum. But I just think that if you're talking about the holistic needs of a particular student, it's tough to design what their educational needs are if the faculty and the teachers and the grammar school are not talking with the higher education community. So I think that holistic approach would involve teacher training. It would involve assessment. I've seen in the literature the idea of testing students to move into higher education and AccuPlay. So I can't tell you how many times I've had to deal with a student that got a B or an A in algebra in high school and came to the college and got tested into remediation. That's a killer. That kills their spirit. That kills their dreams. I can't tell you how many times students were honor students in the coming from the high schools, and they found themselves in remediation. So, that's an example of how the bridge is a little lopsided. That's right.
It's
so
insufficient.
whatever the learning objectives are in fourth grade, eighth grade, high school, that should be a continuum of learning objectives that ultimately get them into higher education or to a job. And that's not the case right now. That's, you know, there are a lot of one-offs, but by and large, it's really not the case. So we're saying in higher ed, we need more students that are adaptable or adept in the STEM fields, for example. I don't know if that communication is being delivered, you know, in those lower grades. You know, you can contextualize how to read through the sciences. Everything around us is scientific in nature, so you can contextualize that. So I don't know if that answered your question. I would need some thoughts to put.
More to think about when we look at their 4.6 million when we started this work, right? 4.6 million young people who didn't have the benefit of this holistic vision that you are describing, and we see that as an asset, untapped potential, an opportunity to maybe fill in the steps on the bridge. But Sheila, when you think about the long-term game, and you look at 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, what are you hoping we see differently as a result of having your office leading a plan? What do you see in the future if we're talking about the long game?
So the future scares me, frankly, because some of the conversations we're leading, frankly, are around the future of work. And so we compare the research that's been done for us with the Economy League against where we know growth is expected to be in Philadelphia. And we understand that those jobs are at the low end of the skills continuum and the low end of the pay continuum. But then we overlay with that the automation readiness index. And to Guy's point, you know, drivers, they're at 96% on that index. That means even though we may personally not want to have an autonomous vehicle, business will, right? So when we prepare people to be drivers, are we just, you know, keeping our own jobs because they'll be back in 5 years, right? Cashiers, retail clerks, healthcare, they're all at the top of the automation readiness index. So employers, nothing personal, Justin, are in it to make money, right? And so the driver is profit, not necessarily social need. And so as government, you know, we are trying to get the big picture going so that people can understand that what we're doing is not enough. And when we talk about being nimble and flexible in the future, we mean nimble and flexible. And I know you guys go, well, what is she saying, government and nimble and flexible? We know, you know what I mean? But we have to move that dime forward across all of our organizations, because the tendency is to try to do well what we've been doing instead of thinking about what we need to be doing in the future. Those are the things that we're trying, you know, to really just struggle with.
I heard challenge issued, right? Yes. I hope you heard the challenge, which is if we keep doing what we've been doing, we're going to get the same thing we've been getting, and that is not going to be sufficient for the future. So that is a wake-up call and a challenge for us to think what needs to be different now so that we're preparing for the next level. You can. Oh, well, okay. Well, listen. Hold on.
Come on.
Everybody's going to get your chance.
Before Justin wants to talk, I have a question for Justin.
Go ahead,
so Justin.
Go ahead. Ask him a question, you want to say something?
Yeah.
No, because he's going to answer my question. Right. So Justin, the cashless stores, how close are we to that at the Gap? Relax, everybody.
Cashless stores.
So Amazon Plus tried it and didn't work here in the city. But what's the Gap perspective? We talk about jobs being lost. So where is the Gap mind around cashless stores, and where does automation impact your job the most?
So I'll tell you where we are around brick and mortar.
Yes.
And so I think when we think about online and brick and mortar stores, we see that there's still a desire for the customer to shop in store. And so when we think about the transition of industry from cashier to automation, what we think about is a shift in how does that customer experience change in our store. And so there's always a need for employee, but that experience may look different. And so when I think about the conversation shift with Youth Build and the organizations that we're preparing students for, it's what are the competencies, what are the skills that are going to set them up to be our employee of choice? And so you're right, we have a strategy around smaller, stronger teams. And so how do we make this population part of that stronger team model where we're going to see smaller teams. It's to your point, it's the reality of what we're going to see. But how do we partner through volunteerism and bringing our employees into community organizations to help that direct connection between the youth and their confidence gains, their skill gains that help them be our employee of choice for those type of roles that we're having at our stores. And so I think that's where our commitment is. When we think about programs like America's Promise and some of that work we're doing and pledging to commit to how do we prepare readiness for employment at our stores.
Thank you. See, I could do your job
Did you
too.
get your, I see,
sorry,
look at you, high five. I'm okay with sharing.
I'm looking at the clock. What does that mean? We have like a lot of time?
Don't worry, I got this.
I'm just curious.
Did you get to add your point,
Do you
Sheila?
have something to add?
I forgot.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I'm the one getting old.
Oh, you know what?
I'm gonna issue the final question before we move to question and answer. They're laughing because y'all are hoot. What gives you hope? What gives you hope? We talk a lot about challenges and a new vision, but in this work, what gives you hope? And we're gonna start with Mr. Patrick.
I would say, the common energy and the passion that people in this business have for success, right? I think we know that sometimes we're given rules by the state that don't make sense to us as far as how do we deliver services. But I think we're really lucky to have passionate people. I'm fortunate to have Kim McCaffrey, who works at the Philadelphia Works organization, lead our charge in youth programming. So I would say it's the passion of the people in the business. Like, I love this work. This is a gigantic puzzle, but I love it because I got passionate people who also want to do the right thing. So I would say it's the passion of the people that are going to drive the change.
Sheila, what gives you hope?
Yeah, you try to beat that one.
Challenge accepted. Go, Sheila.
Challenge accepted. Right. And I got 1 minute. Is that what it says? Okay.
30 seconds now.
I think for me, it's noticing the shift in how we do business, right? So we all knew each other before, right? And so the collaborative piece is a big piece, to your credit, Pat, right?
Thank you.
But I also think we are moving to more of a quantitative and qualitative measurement of what we're doing. I think we're moving past we help John and we tell the story and we all feel good and then we move on to building systems that help hundreds of Johns instead of one. I think it's about being able to connect to employers and to understand very specifically what their needs are and to incorporate them in the work. Like, a lot of times we're at different ends. We want to help people, employers want to help people help them.
Fair enough.
And so as we start to braid and understand that our work doesn't work unless at the end of the day they're able to gain and retain employment to start their way on the career pathway. When we start incorporating employer voice and what they need, now we have a different situation, right? Now we can effectively connect to business in a different way.
What gives you hope, Dr. Generals?
I would echo everything that was just said. We have passion, we have intelligence, we have a willingness, we have a commitment. I would add to that, we have incredibly smart and tenacious students who are coming through this pipeline. I see it every day. The odds that they are up against, yet their willingness to surpass those odds is just a phenomenon that people should be incredibly proud of and give us all hope as to what the future of this city might be. And their willingness to recognize that they have their challenges, and they're holding us accountable and looking to us for leadership and trying to make those differences. I was with some students yesterday was Denim Day. Everybody knows what Denim Day is?
No.
All right, it's kind of like a anti-sexual harassment day and recognizing, and we had students out there giving their story. I mean, I'm getting emotional now just hearing some of the stories that they had gone through for themselves, for their children, in this space of sexual harassment. But yet they were there, and at some point the clock clicked off and they had to go to class. Emotion aside, they had to go to class. So I see this on a daily basis. Next week we have graduation. You guys will be there, yes, and you'll hear incredible stories. I think the situations they find themselves in, I believe, are not as a result of themselves. It's a result of a society that fuels inequities, that's based in racism and based in class and sexual sexism, and they're the result of that. And I think their abilities and their talent, based on their abilities and their talents, coupled with the willingness of those trying to find pathways for them, will eventually lead the city into a great place in Americans' pantheon of big cities.
Awesome. Justin, what gives you hope?
So a couple things. Like I first think about a couple of the stories of the success stories of youth that went from anxieties around interviewing for a position in our stores to now being leaders in our stores, or taking on even other job and career opportunities that are connected to some of their learnings from these experiences. And so we think that that's a win-win, whether they are successful, with employment, career-wise within our company, or they've gotten something from this experience that's been able to equip them for career pathing and what they want to do with their careers. I think the other thing is our commitment. And I think that these conversations are the starting place. Gap Inc., we have a commitment that 10,000 of our employees will come from these communities, these community type workforce initiatives. And so we're committed to the work. And I think that this type of conversation, this type of collaboration, the employer voice being a part of the solve is, I think, what excites me the most.
Cheryl, you got 1 minute to tell me what gives you hope.
I think for me, it's right now at this moment in time, it's the success that I'm feeling, seeing, experiencing in bringing young people to the workplace in a successful way. We've approached our employer partners in a very different way with the work we're doing now, especially in the apprenticeship space. And they have really just come to the table, being willing to engage in discussions that in the past I never thought would be possible. Willing to engage in discussions around trauma and diversity and how HR policies need to be changed in order to make space for these young people to succeed. And I'm really seeing the employers stepping up in the youth space, and it just has been very heartening for me. And I agree with everything that's been said, the collaboration, the success stories of the youth, the tenacity of the youth, but we need the employers. And I feel that in Philadelphia, we do have so much support from employers. We just gotta mold it and, get it in the right lane and organize it and coordinate it. But I feel very hopeful about that.
So now we get to hear from you. How many people got questions? Let's move expeditiously, please. Don't be shy, raise your hand, questions. Okay, great.
This is a question in response to something Dr. Generals talked about with regard to the collaboration between elementary school teachers. Hi, sorry. This is for Dr. Generals. I'm really intrigued by the idea of bringing early educators, elementary educators with industry leaders and higher ed folks. And I'm just curious if you could, in theory, I know you talked about that in theory, but kind of how you would begin to operationalize that on a systematic level, and if you've seen any districts and cities that have done that successfully.
They're not whole cities, but there are certainly projects where, for example, Temple Community College of Philadelphia and a school and a large school district work together on these types of vertical alignments, if you will. But I think that's part of my issue, is that there's a lot of one-offs. There are a lot of great programs out there, but we have yet to systematically approach it in a different way. Higher ed, even in the laws, there's higher ed laws and there's K-12 laws, totally two different title structures at the federal government level. Higher ed has leadership that's embedded in the Department of Education, both at the federal and state level, but they have two different functions, and it's almost like two different phenomena, two different entities working in the interest of one person. So to me, whether it's teacher training, whether it's a curriculum approach, you have some schools that are skill-based, some that are problem-based, problem-focused. I think bringing the businesses into the curriculum alignment of this superstructure, if you will, would be ideal, because we need to know what the skill sets are that they need to have. And to answer your question quickly, I don't think there's whole cities that are doing this. There are one-offs that are doing it. And I think the evidence supports the idea that in those cases where you have that kind of vertical alignment, the outcomes are much more effective, much more productive.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
I think they're controlling it.
Yeah, they're
yeah,
controlling it.
okay, so now it's on. I didn't know, they wanted to keep our chatter to a minimum. So the city's been working very hard to understand the connection between education and work. And as Shakima knows, we're opening an office called the Office of Career Connected Education. And the pilot study that we're doing to see if it works is to start at the high school level and have graduated work-based learning experiences through 9th, 10th, 11th grade, associated directly with the curriculum that they are studying, finishing with internships in the 12th grade that are paid, right, to actually start to connect the dots for high school students, 9th, 10th, and 11th, 12th. And the underpinning of it is the businesses that we are working with. So we've already come out of the gate with a pilot piece that we did with the Mayfair Business District, Lincoln High School, PYN, right, to start talking about how we're going to imbibe that in curriculum in the school district, and we're moving that going forward. So there is hope.
If I could just say one final thought. So right now we have about 1,500 students that are in dual enrollment programs.
Yes.
I didn't mention that at all today, I'm sorry. But students that are taking college level credits in conjunction with their high school experience is an incredibly, incredibly effective approach towards success and ultimate career success. And the evidence is there across the nation, but we have yet to figure out how we can do it writ large. So, in Philadelphia, we have one-off dual enrollment projects, and then we have a middle college program where the entire school is based around students completing high school at the same time that they completing an associate's degree at the same time that they graduate high school. Last year, in another one-off project up in the Northeast, we had 6 students that graduated with us in May before they even got their high school diploma in June. All 6 of those students went to fairly prestigious colleges to finish up as juniors, rising juniors. They got scholarships. So the evidence is there that we can merge these two educational enterprises, if you will, in the interest of students.
We have time for at least one more question. Any others? Okay, don't be shy. Yeah, go ahead. And do I see any other hands? Okay, I have more time? Okay, we got 2. This table's getting the final question. Okay, well, maybe, there's lots of questions.
We got time.
Can I have some of your time, Monique? Okay, great. So we're gonna go here, here, and then in the back, and then you are gonna get, Mamadou, you're gonna get the last question, okay? Great, let's go.
Hello, and I want to say thank you guys for taking the time out. My name's Alina Duran. I'm out of Hartford, Connecticut. So I noticed that you guys had talked a lot about education, furthering the education rather. And I noticed that the skills and training that the youth receive come from the programs and services that you guys provide. A lot of opportunity youth come from broken homes, lack of parental guidance, and other systematic conditions. So how do you hold, if you have any systems in place, how do you hold educators accountable for not really pushing that skills? A lot of the people that are already in those positions, they don't really care, you know what I'm saying? So how do you push them to help the kids or break that barrier? Because a lot of people have those positions as educators, but they're just working in that position. They just have that title, but they don't really have the sense of, so how do you hold them accountable for not really kind of doing what they have to do? And then you have to have these programs kind of put in place because an educator or a teacher couldn't do that for a student.
I'll take it, even though I'm not the educator in the bunch, right? But I think when you think about what we're trying to achieve here in Philadelphia, I mean, it personifies that idea of it takes a village. I don't think any one person learns from one other person their soft skills. I think you have some foundational skills you learn at home. I think the educative process teaches you some other, and I think life, the world at large teaches you the rest. And so in a fashion, it is about, can we build that connective tissue around those individuals so they learn what it is that they need to learn? And I don't think it's, in some ways, I don't even think it's fair just to hold the educator themselves to that task, right? My mom used to say, you go to school to be taught, you learn at home. And so in a lot of ways, we're trying to build this village of service, that addresses that specific issue.
It's one of the things that we found to be successful with the internship model is that the youth have a job coach, they have a store leader that's connected directly to the internship, and then they have a peer buddy in the store as well. And so the idea or the concept behind that is that there's relationships there and a support system that helps the youth navigate through those different challenges. And what I found is that our store leaders even gain an empathetic leadership and understanding how to deal with those situations. And so there's this give and take that we get even as an employer from those type of situations and learning how to navigate through some of those challenges that we see in our stores and our environments every day too.
Awesome.
I also would, if you don't mind, would just like to say that it's incumbent on the organization that's providing the training to really develop that space as a safe space for the students. And that is not just one educator. That means all the staff, even the staff who don't work with the young people, have to develop a sense that this is a community that we're wrapping our arms around the individuals who come into our program every day. And maybe that youth, that young person or student isn't going to relate well to this one person, but then there are others around that can pick that up. I also found that with partners, I have to do a lot of talking that not every, for example, teacher at that post-secondary institution is going to be a good match for our student. And we want the teachers selected, the faculty selected, who are going to be that match. And if it's not going to work, if it's not going to work, then we have to do something about it. We have to hold our post-secondary partners accountable for having faculty that are going to work with our population. So it's a continuous, ongoing process to really take the pulse, take the temperature, and make sure that we're really supporting the students who come to us.
Thank you, Cheryl. We're going to get your question, and then Mamadou, you're next.
So I just had a quick question. Is the way our secondary and post-secondary system design able to support the broad scaling of some of these strategies, such as dual enrollment, and PSAO is very effective in our community, but there's pushback. So that's just my only concern. Like, can we really broadly scale some of these strategies, or do we need to think about how do we transform how we do education?
I've half jokingly have said we really need a Marshall Plan. I don't know, telling my age now, but we rebuilt all of Europe in less than 10 years. And I think given the deeply rooted beginnings of K-12 and higher ed, I think we have the physical resources. The question is whether we have the will and the willingness to do it. So that would be my answer. Dr. Height and I, we were good friends. We meet on a regular basis, and we try to move the needle on that. But there's a lot of interest in the public school system, as there are a lot of interest in higher ed, and it may happen at some point. I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime, but we have to keep fighting and making the case. I don't want to say fighting, making the case for how important that is.
Mamadou?
Good. So this is specifically for Justin. So one of the things I struggle to understand is that for businesses, if this is such an imperative, if this is about the bottom line for them, why aren't more businesses knocking on our doors and seeking to work with us, right? So I'm curious about, through the work that you've done, have you seen any impact on other businesses trying to copy what you're doing or trying to serve more young people, to benefit from this talent supply?
It's a great question, and I think about the size of Gap Inc. And I think it's one of the things that kind of puts us in this place of influence. And so I think that, we see, I mentioned earlier the initiative around America's Promise and the Alliance work to kind of help influence other industry or other retailers to do similar work. I don't know if we've necessarily advertised as much the work that we do, nor have we advertised all of the, or have yet realized all of the positive benefit to our business yet. So what we're learning through the last 12 years of this program is what, again, started out as just a community effort really has this duplicative or reciprocated benefit to the organization. And I think we were able to articulate that better than what we ever have been before. And so I can't necessarily speak to impact that we've already had, but I do know it's work that we're committed to, and we're signing pledges to make sure that we are able to commit back to this population.
Well, please join me in giving my panel a round of applause as we exit and bring Monique up to transition us. Thank you.